I'm Andy Larson. Let's talk Utes. So just how different will travel be for the Utes in the Big 12 next year compared to the Pac-12 this year? There are a bunch of different ways of measuring travel distance, obviously. Unless you're a crow, you probably don't care about the direct miles from one school to another. But what about drive time? What about flying time? How much will it actually cost to get to these new games? I did a bunch of Google Maps research to find the distances here between the University of Utah and their new opponents. All distances, by the way, are from Rice-Eccles Stadium to whatever their football stadium is. So much further are they on average? A lot further. By driving, it's about double. These graphs are listed in minutes, but if we do the math here, it takes about 12 and a half hours to drive to the average Pac-12 school, and just under a day to drive to the average Big 12 school. If you compare it by air, it's about an hour's difference. How about the full driving breakdown? Here's all the different Pac-12 schools on one part of the chart, all the Big 12 schools on the other. And you can see all the Pac-12 schools have pretty flat driving distances. They're basically all a 10 to 13 hour drive away. The Big 12, on the other hand, is a crazy conference. It's got a ton of variance. It can take 50 minutes to drive to BYU or 34 hours to drive to UCF in Orlando. And you can see the same thing in the air travel data, but on a smaller scale, right? So note that air travel here takes into account the distance from the closest major airport. So Manhattan, Kansas, for example, home of Kansas State, is about 2 hours away from their closest major international airport. On average, it takes about just over 4 hours to get to a Big 12 stadium by flight, and that, of course, doesn't take into account the security or any waiting time or at the airport, waiting for your lift, whatever it might be. Finally, I looked at just the cost of flights to each airport, which is data kept by the U.S. Department of Transportation. Every Pac-12 flight was between $171 and $282 on average one way. By the way, that does include the fact that some first-class tickets are part of that average. Flights to 7 different Big 12 schools are more expensive than all Pac-12 schools. So, in other words, this move to the Big 12 is a Big 12 big-time bummer, frankly, for folks who travel to a lot of Utah games. Whether it's for players, for parents, for fans, travel to Utah sports is just about to get a whole lot harder.